Welcome to today's episode where we tackle one of the most debated topics in retirement planning, the 4% rule. Originally held as the gold standard for safe retirement withdrawals, this rule has guided countless retirees in ensuring their nest egg lasts throughout their golden years. But with today's changing economic landscape and evolving strategies, is the 4% rule still the best approach? Join us as we dive into the origins of this rule, explore its continued relevance, and discuss alternative strategies that may better suit today's retirees. Whether you're on the brink of retirement or planning ahead, this episode is packed with crucial insights you don't want to miss. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Financial Mirror. Where future success is reflected in our knowledge of fixing the one thing we can control, ourselves.
Welcome to the Financial Mirror, and thanks for joining me today as we continue to work to improve the one thing we can control, ourselves. Here at the Financial Mirror, it is not about the numbers and spreadsheets alone, but about transforming and educating you on money so you can make smarter financial decisions. If this is the first time you are joining in, don't forget to hit subscribe on YouTube to be notified of all the new episodes as they release. If you're listening to us on Rumble, don't forget to follow and like the video. And if you're on a podcast platform of your choice, don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast. This is a episode that I had thought about doing, and then an event happened and a lot of people came asking questions and I answered their questions. I forgot I was going to do a video on it, and I forgot all about ever creating this content. So we're here today and I have remembered. So today we're going to talk about the 4% rule and a little bit of background, a little bit of understanding of its context and its history, but more importantly, is it still the gold standard for withdrawal strategies? I've done episodes in the past where we've talked about different ways to withdraw, different rules that are out there. When we think about the 4% rule, what I want to talk about is this a safe bet? Is this a reliable bet on when you start to withdraw money to stick to the 4% rule? And if you don't know what the 4% rule is, totally fine. We're going to cover that very briefly today. However, what the context of this video is all about is truly questioning, everything, right? Like that. If you ask anybody about, well, how do I make it through retirement? They're going to say, oh, just, operate under the 4% rule. Let's talk about that. Let's see if that's still the best. But all in all, there's a lot of conversation about it. But the issue here is that when we have conversation about things that also have history can speak for itself, right? Most of the time. Now, when you think about how things are changing and the new economic kind of like structure and how things are set up, maybe it doesn't make sense, right? So I wanted to make this episode just kind of walk through that. Very important though. And I don't care if you're retired, if you're about to retire, or you're a long ways from retiring, this is something that you really need to get your hands around. And I'm going to tell you why. Because if you start, and I just want to level set with everyone really quick, and then we'll dive into the episode. But if you start withdrawing money and you have your nest egg, right? You're in your retirement years, you have your nest egg, and you start withdrawing, it's going to look fine for the first 8 years, right? 10 years. But then all of a sudden, you don't want to be at that 10-year mark. Let's say that you retired at 60. That makes you now 70. And being like, oh my goodness, I'm about out of money, right? Not a good place to be. Not a good place to be 10 years removed from the workforce, 70 years old at that, and needing to go back to work because you don't have enough money to live. It's not a good place to be. So it's very important that you do what's best for you. And that's why I wanted to make this video, because a lot of people are going to go out there and tell you 4% rule is great. Some people are going to tell you the 4% rule is not enough. Some people are going to say the 4% rule potentially is too much. I don't know what's being told to you, but I wanted to level set today. So the first place that I wanted to start this episode is to truly just bring in, where does it come from? And so I pulled this article from the Britannica Money, and it really just talks about Bill Bengen, that, he's a financial advisor, and he created the 4% rule. He created it. He came up with it. What he did is he said, hey, if you withdrew no more than 4.2% of your portfolio, that you would, in the first years of retirement, and adjusted that amount annually thereafter for inflation, there was a 90% chance your nest egg would last about 30 years, right? So if you retired at 60, that would get you to about 90 years, when our average lifespan here in 2024 is sitting in the high 70s, I believe, and I'll fact check myself. I think it's around like 76, 77 on average, male and female, kind of, there's a slight range in that. But if you could get to 90, pretty healthy. The key part, though, that in some of his test cases, portfolios were lasting 50 years. So that's putting you at 110 years old. It's a big deal, right? It's a big deal. And when you go through that, it's super, super important that you understand kind of where do you stand? Like how can I make sure that I don't run out of money? Because that's really what this is all about. If it was up to just like, you had unlimited money, then it wouldn't matter. But you have a finite amount, and you have a unknown amount of years that finite amount needs to last for, right? And nobody knows. You could live from 60 to 70 and it only need to last 10 years. You could live from 60 to 120 and it need to last 60 years, right? Like, I don't know. Right? I don't know. But the key here is that we want to make sure that we're withdrawing in a very, very, very strategic fashion so we don't run out of money. So Bill Bengen, he created the 4% rule, and he just said, hey, if you no more than 4.2% of your portfolio in the first year of retirement, adjust for inflation annually, and 90% chance you're good. You're golden, right? Like, this pretty solid numbers right there, 90%. Now, why did this become such a huge win, right? Like, why was this so attractive? There was other withdrawal strategies out there, and the biggest reason is it's simplistic and it's practical, right? That led to just this huge, widespread adoption. Everyone's recommending the 4% rule. There's tons and tons of studies out there that talked about it, but it's very important that you kind of understand that regardless of what someone tells you, there's history behind the 4% rule. Now, if you're curious, I did want to quickly, there's in this Britannica Money article, it talks about how the 4% rule works. So let's just look right here in this section, and it says, let's say you saved $1 million in the IRA and you plan to retire now. If you withdraw 4% from your individual retirement account, your IRA, the first year, that's $40,000, right? So you'd supplement that with your other types of income, like Social Security and any other income, such as a pension or anything of that nature that you have out there. And every year, so the first year you would withdraw $40,000, and then every year following that, you would account for inflation. So let's assume your account appreciated such that the amount was still $1 million, for an example, and inflation that year was 3%. Well, you would withdraw $41,200, right? Because you would want to start out with your $40,000 and then account for inflation. So 40,000 times 1 is 40,000, but 40,000 times 1.03 is 41,200, right? Because that 0.03 is increasing your withdrawal amount by inflation amount, which is 3%. The amount needs to be that amount needs to adjust based off inflation. The idea here is that if the cost of everything is going up, so does your income. You don't need to just keep withdrawing 40,000. If you're doing pretty good on the 40,000 in this example, sure, be good to go. But that is kind of how the 4% rule works. I'll link this in the description below, and you can easily pull this out and see some of the information that's there. Now, the big question, you understand how it works, you understand where it came from. The big question is the 4% rule still relevant? Is it still relevant? And that is the $1 million question, right? It is the $1 million question. Here's where I would say that there is a good case for the 4% rule being relevant. First, historical market performance averages annual returns that exceed 4%, right? 8 to 10% is your average annual return in the stock market, right? So your whatever fund your IRA is funded with, whatever fund your 401k, your 403b, whatever those are more than likely pulling between 8 and 10% on average annually. Yes, there are years that it has a negative return, but on average, you're pulling over 4%, around that 8 to 10%. So that's a case for 4% rule, right? Because even if you withdrew 4%, your account value would still go up 4% if it returned 8, right? So there's definitely value there. Your money's going to continue to grow even though you're taking away from it. Great in all regards. The other thing is it's because of that, it creates a very kind of conservative approach, and it reduces the risk of depleting your nest egg. Very important. But the key here is that if you're using this and you're kind of rolling through the punches of it, it's very important that you make sure that there's a plan in place for when inflation is drastically changing. Like this past year, we at one point we saw like an 8% inflation rate, right? Which is crazy. So you would have pulled out 8% more than your original 4%, right? And now we're getting into a little bit heftier amounts of money than what we originally planned for. But all in all, those bad years of inflation will definitely help compensate some of the good years will help compensate some of those bad years. We don't see 8% very often at all. But that's really kind of the big deal, is that it is a strategy that can truly help. The 4% withdrawal rate is a great starting point and great rule of thumb, worked for decades. It does come with caveats though. And I think that's kind of the key. It does come with caveats. When using the 4% rule throughout retirement, you must strictly adhere to the constant distribution rate, right? Any deviation in that, meaning you take 6% this year, 2% this year, like any deviation at all will potentially have negative performance in the early years. And it's inevitable that you could miss time and you could take out 8% when the market returns negative 8%. Now you've really dug into your nest egg. So that's definitely leads us into some of the arguments against it. Well, some of the biggest arguments out there against the 4% rule is about the rigid withdrawal rates may not be optimal, that flexibility and adjusting to market conditions could be better. And what that, what people that have that idea, kind of where they think through is like, okay, if the market returns 6%, I'm going to withdraw like 4. If the market returns 8% the year before, I'm going to withdraw 6. If the market is kind of always keeping a little buffer, right? Keeping a little buffer where the account is still growing, but you're not depleting it, any faster than it's growing. And so what that does is when, if you, let's say that you all of a sudden have a 6%, the market returns 6 and you withdraw 4, that your account still grew 2%. The market grew 8 and you withdraw 6. Now you have kind of a 4% buffer, right? Like you have those 2% buffers. And so all of a sudden, when you have a year that is negative, like it returns like a negative 8%, and you've created a 10 or 12% buffer, it doesn't hurt to kind of pull back out and say, hey, you know what can I live on this year? 3%, 4%, whatever that case is. And you can withdraw it and still feel comfortable because of all those buffers that you created, right? So kind of the mindset when you think about that argument, that ability to adjust to the market instead of trying to live on this like comfortable, consistent rate. But But here's the thing. If you want to be sure you won't run out of money, following the 4% rule is 90% chance that you won't run out of money, right? If you go back to the stats originally, 90% chance that you don't run out of money. It is an older rule, right? So it doesn't account for market conditions. In a recession, it's, if you bust up your withdrawal rate during a recession, they could make you, it could have negative consequences in the future. But the big thing here is that it has history, but there's definitely other ways to look at it. So what is my stance, right? Like what is my stance? Hopefully that's what you came here for, is to hear kind of where do I stand on it. I am going to tell you this, that I kind of break it down into 3 areas where I am supportive of the 4% rule. First thing is the historical reliability. So the first reason that I stand behind it, there's decades of data showing that 4% is a safe withdrawal rate. There's decades of data, right? And if you're properly diversified in your, and I hate the word diversified too, but it is still a necessity. If you are properly diversified around in your IRA, in your 401k, 403b, whatever, then you will have a solid return annually most of the time, and the 4% rule is historically reliable. And it kind of flows me into the second thing. Because of it being that history that comes with it, the market returns are almost always above 4%, meaning there will be quite a buffer that will be created with that money. There will be quite a buffer. And that with that buffer creates a safety net. So that's kind of my three-prong approach to this. Is there's historical reliability, and that historical reliability is based on consistently higher than 4% market returns. And because of that historically higher than 4% market returns, it creates a safety net. It creates enough of a safety net and a buffer to where retirees don't run out of money too quickly. And that's how I base this. That's my stance across the board. Now, I do 100% agree with the change of inflation. So it's very important that if you don't want to put yourself in a bind to where inflation it goes up 3% and you're sitting at 4% still, like you're same, and it's not 4% plus 3%, right? It's 3% of your original 4%. So figure out what that is, whatever that 4% is, and that's your number for the rest of your retirement years, right? So very important of that. But starting at 4% kind of gives that room to increase withdrawal as inflation rises, to be slightly flexible, but very important, and I stand behind it. It's a great rule. Where do I differ a little bit? I differ when against others, and I'm going to show you one thing about that is one place that I differ is that yes, you could withdraw more and probably be okay. Yes, you could withdraw more and not run out of money, right? Still have enough money to live your life, and someone else came out with a little bit of a very controversial stance. Dave Ramsey came out and said, hey, 4% rule, no good. 8% is a safe withdrawal rate, right? He came out and said 8% is a safe withdrawal rate. That is what, and I'll share this article too, but that was what he came out and talked about. And, Ramsey in this article, his math is pretty simple. If you're making a 8 to 10, maybe even 12% in good mutual funds, and if inflation for the last 80 years is like 4%, if you make 12 and you leave 4%, and you need to leave 4% in there for the average inflation rate raises, that leaves you with 8. And that's kind of how he came up with that. And he said, yep, I'm perfectly fine withdrawing 8. But if you want to be a little more conservative, 7, maybe 6, but not 5 or 4 or 3. That is where he stood. He stood on that to say, yeah, I'm cool with that. Now, like I said, I'll share this article so you can see it. But the biggest thing is that he came out with it, and I got it. I get what he's saying. I truly get what he's saying. I get where he's coming from. But the issue with it, and it's actually a funny little image. Is I'll actually throw this up there, but this was an image someone put together that kind of walked through that. So initial $1 million portfolio value, 8% taken out. You would need $3 million to maintain an 8% rule for 22 years. And that was kind of what this image was talking through. And it's very interesting. Now, how does that kind of flow with my stance? I do acknowledge that you could withdraw more than 4%. I do acknowledge that. Higher rates could be feasible as long as you're monitoring it and maybe reducing it when necessary, and kind of doing that dynamic, like as the market returns something, you take a little bit, never going higher than 5 or 6, that kind of being your ceiling. But here's where I stand. That's different, and this is why I'm actually kind of surprised that Dave actually went down that path of saying, yeah, you can withdraw 8% and be okay. Because he's talked about this a lot, about building generational wealth, right? Wealth is not accumulated by a single person, and I truly believe this. This is me getting a little deeper than you probably wanted to hear, but it's not accumulated by a single person. Over the years, people have put you in a position, you may be the person putting the next generation in position to build wealth, right? To build financial freedom for that next generation. And maybe you grew up and you look back and you had nothing, right? And so that gave you a little oomph to go out and get something. And maybe your parents averaged a $50,000 a year income, and now you're averaging a $75,000 a year income. Well, if you withdraw and you end up dusting your whole nest egg in your retirement years, what have you left for the next generation? Nothing, right? You dusted your nest egg. It's gone. So now they're back at square one. Like, they're back at whatever they earn, that kicks it off, right? How I look at this, and where, like I said, I've heard Dave talk about building generational. This is the reason why I'm a little kind of puzzled by that whole piece that came out. Is you have the opportunity. You built this. You built a nice, comfortable nest egg, and sure, withdraw and enjoy your retirement years. Withdraw and enjoy. Figure out, if you want, figure out what that number is. What is your retirement number? If you want to live on $80,000, figure out how much money you need saved up to go live on $80,000, right? Comfortably, withdrawing at a 4, maybe 5 or 6%, and start building generational wealth for the next group. Like. Take away yourselves. Take away thinking about, well, I'm building this so that I can enjoy retirement. No. Think about your children's children. Think about that aspect of like building something that's going to extend beyond you, right? You're going to instill value. You're going to instill different ethos. You're going to instill different, just ideas that people can, behaviors that people can rely on in your kids, and your kids are going to, pass those down to their kids, and you're going to be the start of potentially something, because somebody started in you. Somebody put you in a position to where you're sitting here, where you're watching or listening to this episode, where you're going out and you're probably working hard. You're probably grinding out. You're probably making a killing, and you want to take control of your finances. Don't think about all the time, well, I need to earn this so that I can go and enjoy it. No, I need to withdraw. I can withdraw 8% and I'll be just fine. Sure, you can, but dusting your nest egg and passing nothing on to the next generation is really just, it's almost stagnated your the family that you had. It's kind of stagnated it for that lifetime, right? For that, pretty much that century, I guess you could say. So go out and figure out what that is, figure out how much you can take away, and truly, truly, truly look at it from a sense of, yeah, maybe I can only withdraw 4%. but I'm going to have enough left over that I'm going to pass that down to the next generation. And then that's their starting point. And then they're going to build. And you're going to instill those values into them. And they're going to build on top of what you built, what you started. And then they'll pass that down. And then they'll pass that down. And they'll keep going and going and going. And it's something that you can be proud of. I go to a men's workout group in the morning, F3. If you've never heard of it, go check them out. It's a really good community, peer-led workout group with a bunch of guys. And it's something that, a guy that was out there this morning, he talked about how in life, the tombstone has your date, the year you were born, and the year you passed, and that dash signifies everything you did in between those years, and it's very very impactful because of the reason that is your opportunity. If finances is something your family has struggled with over the years, and you want to be the stop to it, start building generational wealth. Pass something down and the values that come with that extra money, right? Like, you can't just hand off $1 million and think that it's not going to go rogue if you have not taught and built great financial discipline in your children or your grandchildren or whomever it is that you're speaking with. So important. So hopefully you got something out of this episode. Hopefully this is something that you can take away, that you can start to really think about, because it's more than just the 4%. Sure, you could withdraw 5%. You could probably withdraw 6%. Personally, I'm not withdrawing more than 5 or 6%. If I need more than that to live on, whatever that number, whatever your retirement number is, go have a bigger nest egg, right? Like, there's two variables in that equation. Don't try to make up how much money you're going to get every year by upping the percent you're withdrawing. Go change how much your nest egg is. Go change the overall value of your nest egg. If you only have $1 million, go get 1.5 million, and then that 4% will be more than, it'll be 60,000, right? I think I did that math right on the spot. I'm pretty sure, but if I did, I'm sorry. But yeah, like, if you go get 1.5 million, boom, there you go. You got a little bit more to live on. But I hope you got something out of this. As always, if there is anything that you need help with in terms of getting to that next phase, whether that be getting out of debt, whether that be getting started budgeting, putting together a financial plan to start saving for a house, saving for retirement, building a retirement plan, a withdrawal plan, like all those type of things, head over to thefinancialmirror.org/ not / anything, right there on the home screen. You'll hit book now, and you can schedule a free consultation, and we will get you booked with a session or with a package that works for you. Now on to the / if you go to financialmirror.org / shop, you can buy some awesome Financial Mirror gear to help support the stream. I truly appreciate everyone tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share this episode. Till next week, continue improving the one thing you can control, yourself. Peace.
Well, that wraps up today's Financial Mirror. Join us next week as we continue to work on ourselves, change our mentality, and to commit to achieving the success we always envisioned. Regardless of your platform, help us grow as a community. Please like, subscribe, and share with the people in your lives.